All right, what's good, everybody? It's your man DJ Swamp Thing. This is another episode of What's Your Hustle, a podcast where we are talking to both the artistic and the business professional realm. And today we are on the business professional side with my special guest. Really excited to be able to introduce her to you guys. She has been just on a roll with a lot of the things that she's involved in, a lot of the stuff that she is doing. Definitely an entrepreneur, wears the name like a badge of honor. I give to you, Shameca Tana. Hey, what's up? How are you?
Hey, brother. Hey, what's
What's
going
going on?
on? Oh man, nothing much. I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. We could not end this first month of interviews without having you on here. So I appreciate it. I know you're busy. Thank you for squeezing a little bit of time in for your boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So listen, we're not gonna waste too much time. We're gonna get right into it. Let everybody know what's your hustle.
Okay. My name is Shameca Tana. I am a multicultural esthetician. I'm an aesthetics instructor, motivational speaker, and podcast host of She's All That. I do a little bit of everything, honestly. I mean, we wear many hats as women, but my favorite hat to wear is a mother. I'm a mother first. But the second to that is being an esthetician. I absolutely love doing that. I love what I do. I love specializing in treating skin of color. And yeah, that's my hustle. That's what I do. I teach young ladies, I educate them, and I prepare them to go and take state board, get licensed to become estheticians and go out in the industry and do great things. So
Awesome. So you said a lot there. So we're gonna try to tackle as much as we can. But I think where I want to start first is just kind of let everybody know how this whole journey started into entrepreneurship, into working for yourself, into that hustle, because everybody knows that's not something easy. Some people might think it's easy to pursue and do, but it could be more taxing than having a 9 to 5. So just kind of go into the transition into maybe working for someone else, if you did that at once upon a time, into full entrepreneurship.
yeah, so back in 2020, as you know, back then it was the global pandemic. So I was faced with some hard decisions during that time to figure out really which direction I wanted to go with my life. So during that time, I was working for a doctor. I got fired, and involuntarily fired. Like, I did not even know I was getting fired. He just stopped paying me.
Mm.
And so at that time, I was like, well, I don't really want to go back to a 9 to 5. I don't want to go working back in corporate America, but I do want something for myself. I knew I always wanted to go to beauty school. I always wanted to be an esthetician, but never really had the time to do it because of working a 9 to 5. And when you go into the beauty industry, especially when you're going to school, you are dedicating 9, sometimes 10 hours a day
Right,
to this profession. And so you don't have a lot of time to work, right?
right.
So I had to make a decision, like, do I want to go back to work, or do I want to take this risk and actually pursue something that I've been wanting to pursue for a long time? I mean, being at home during the pandemic, we had a lot of time to sit and think. So I went ahead, made that decision. It was not easy to make, but I took that leap of faith during a time when it was scary, during a time when people were uncertain about what the future was going to hold. I made that decision to go to school and become an esthetician at that time. However, when I went to school during that time, my plan was not to automatically come out and open my own suite, open my own business. My plan was to actually go out and work under somebody for at least a year, just so I could kind of learn the business, learn like back office and things like that. However, that didn't work out like that. God had other plans.
Right.
And I'm thankful for the plans that he had, because the young lady that I was going to work under during that time, some things came up in her business, and she was just like, I can't take you on right now. I got some things that came up, and, business comes first. And so with me now being a business owner, I totally understand there's some decisions you're going to have to make for your business.
Mhm.
So I took that opportunity during that time to just rely on the knowledge that I just gained being in school, on top of knowledge that I have outside of that, as customer service, retail, all of the different things that I've learned being in the workforce. I just compile all that together, and I went and opened my own suite.
Mm.
That was hard to do, though. It really
Right,
was. It was hard.
right.
But I did it, and I'm so glad that I did, because it gave me something for myself. It gave me something to strive for.
Yeah.
It showed me the strength that I have. It showed me the resilience that I have. It just showed me that I'm able to do whatever I set my heart to, even when I'm not sure. Right. We don't really know all the time what direction God is going to take us, but as long as we're willing to take on that opportunity, willing to be obedient to the call, he'll make things happen for us. And so you are absolutely right. Like making that decision to become an entrepreneur is not an easy decision. And honestly, you work more.
Right.
You work more for real as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur than working a 9 to 5. It's a huge commitment. So,
Well,
I made that decision at a time when it was scary.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. And you know what? It's funny as you're talking, I'm sitting there thinking, you know, that field at that time of the year, at that time of the world, of the season, and with all the stuff going on with, you know, the pandemic and everything, you know, you were still pretty close, in pretty close contact with people and things like that. You know, what were your peers saying? What were your friends, your family, and anybody in your inner circle saying about the decision for you to take your decision to take that road at that time of what the world was going through? Because again, you know, the world was trying to separate. You took on a field that was trying to bring, you know, that brought people even closer than usual, you know, especially for at least an hour or so, however long it takes to do what you do. So was there any, I don't want to say negative feedback. Was there some doubt, even with yourself? Like, you know, is this really the right time for me to be doing this? Like, what kind of atmosphere was that?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely had some family members that were not necessarily rooting for me for that. I had some people saying things like, you know, you want to go to esthetician school now? Like, that's not an essential business. That's not necessarily something people are willing to pay for right now.
Right.
We have this pandemic going on. People are sick. People are dying. You know, you don't want to go into an atmosphere like that and bring something back home to your family. So, I mean, obviously, that is a risk that we had to take for anybody, regardless of if you're going to school or if you're working. There was risks that we took just walking out the door every day to go to the grocery store, you know, go to the doctor's appointments, but we still had to live our lives. And so the thing that kept me going was to not live in fear, knowing that God went before me and knowing that he gave me vision beyond the pandemic is what gave me that motivation to go to school. So yeah, there were people that had doubt in me. And I fuel off of things like that because I know that most of the time when people say things like that, it's really just them projecting their fears and insecurities on you. And so for me, at the end of the day, I have to make this decision for my family. And yes, I was taking a huge risk, but the risk that I took paid off in a tremendous way now because now I have something for me and I can give back to those same women. And unfortunately, you know, thinking about right now, we don't talk too much about COVID-19 anymore, right? We're not talking too much about it, but for real, into like right now, today's time, there's a lot of people that have been affected by that in a way that we don't talk about, right? So a lot of people have developed anxiety, more depression, all of those different things. So this is a time now for people to seek out places like estheticians where they can relax, where they can crumble, right? Where they're able to come and just, you know, be away from all the hustle and bustle of the world. So even though at that time it was scary, there was a benefit in going to school during that time and gaining skills that I can use now with people who have suffered during that time with their mental health. So yeah, I had people talking trash, but you know, that didn't faze me.
Clearly, yeah, clearly that, and I like what you said there, about, you know, that being a fuel. I think a lot of go-getters, you know, really I like to use the term self-made folks. I think a lot of folks feel the way you felt when those who were, you know, close to them, not so close to them, basically told them that they were foolish and silly and, you know, not thinking right to have those kind of ideas and thoughts, because you saw yourself doing things differently, you know. And I think you're right. You know, sometimes it's because they can't do it or they don't want to do it that they assume that because they don't want to do it, then you shouldn't do it. You know, but or on the other hand, they know you can do it and they don't want to do it. So they don't want to see you, you know, hit that plateau that they, you know they can't do themselves. But, you know, I applaud you for, you know, staying steadfast and keeping your head up, you know, up top and looking to the clouds and following your dream like that. And obviously it's done you well because as you mentioned, and I want to talk about this a little bit, now you segue into actually teaching what it was that you actually did on your own. So you're now a perfect example of how to do this craft and do it successfully. So talk about that a little bit.
Oh, wow. So honestly, when I graduated from aesthetic school, I didn't have a desire to actually go back and teach, not at that time.
Right.
But quiet as kept, I always wanted to go out and actually open my own school because of what I learned when I was in school. There was some things that I felt the students really needed to know more about, such as learning about clients of color, skin of color. That's something that we didn't really learn about in school. And so I went and seeked out that knowledge for myself. And I saw the void that was there. I was like, man, if more estheticians really knew how to treat clients of color effectively, right, and safely, they could really touch a bigger market out there. Like being in school during that time, I saw just how minute the lessons were for skin of color. So I went there, learned what I needed to learn, but then I realized I needed to know more. So going out in the industry after learning what I needed to learn for multicultural aesthetics, I'm in my suite and I'm like, you know what? This is becoming a little bit, too small for me. Like I really want to be able to reach more people. I want to be able to expand on what I know. So yes, I did want to go and open a school, but the beauty in it is that I ended up back at the same school that I graduated from. And the journey to get there was so wild. It was so wild. Like I said, I didn't have initially the
Right.
desire to go back to school to
Right.
teach, right?
Right.
But there was an opportunity to go back and teach because, as I said before, I am a speaker as well. And so speaking, I really wanted to expand on that, but also in terms of speaking, I wanted to teach more as well. So I applied and I didn't know that I would be hired at the time. I just applied. I was like, let me go see if this is, if this is it. This is something that I
Yeah.
really, can do. So I
Yeah.
went ahead and I applied. And when I went in for the interview, they told me at the time, like, hey, I'm a licensed esthetician at this time, but I also needed to be an advanced licensed esthetician and an instructor. Like I needed both of those licenses in order for me to teach at the school. And so I didn't have those two at the time. And this is how God works. Like when you really listen to what he says and
Yeah.
you follow his
Yeah.
lead,
Yeah.
things can happen for you like 1, 2, 3, ABC. And so I went ahead and I did the protocol to go ahead and get my licenses. And I passed my advanced license the first time. And then like 3 weeks later, I went and took my instructor's license and I passed that the very first time. So I just knew like, okay, this is it. I
Yeah.
reached back out to the director at the school. I let her know I got my licenses and she's like, dang girl, you're not playing. Like you ready to come in? I said, I'm ready to get in there because I got some things to
Wow.
offer these girls.
Yeah.
And so I end up back at the school and I've been rocking and rolling ever since. I've been there for over a year now, a
Okay.
little over a year, like a year and a month. And it's one of the most fulfilling yet challenging professions
Sure.
that I've had. So
Sure.
before actually going into this field, I've never taught before, right? I've never taught before, but I'm a firm believer that God will call. God doesn't call to qualify. He qualifies the called. And so
Yeah.
even though I don't have or didn't have the aesthetics license or the background to teach before, I have life experiences. I have things that really can qualify me regardless of what society may say you need in order for you to be a teacher. And so, I got into it. It was just kind of one of those things I rolled on. It was just like, okay, let me try this out and see if it really is something that I could do. And I've been doing it and I love that I've done it.
That's great. That's awesome. And you mentioned a couple of things there, man. I wish we had like just a whole heap of time. But and I want to get into the speaking too, but just how uh, not necessarily teaching what you're teaching, but just the fact that you're in that environment, able to use your experience, your know-how, your sisterhood, right? How fulfilling is that just for you personally to be in that environment? No matter if you could be teaching math, but just having that environment, being able to be around so many young women or older women or your peers, but in that position that you're in, because I think a lot of teachers, no matter what they do, don't get enough credit, right? And especially if you are really spilling into your students, and really giving them, the knowledge and that open door, that swinging door to have those conversations or to let them know that there is somebody there for you that wants to see you succeed And that's selfless, right? That's a
Mhm.
selfless act. So,
Yeah.
how fulfilling it is for you, especially as a mom too, to be able to feed into the community outside of your household. How does that have for you?
Man, it feels amazing, honestly. I never thought that I would be where I'm at right now.
Mhm.
Because back in the day, working those regular 9 to 5 jobs, I really didn't see my future being as bright as it is now
Mhm.
because I was working like at a call center where it felt like this cubicle was a jail. It just felt like a jail.
Yeah, yeah,
So to be
yeah,
able to actually pour into these young women on a
yeah.
regular basis, it honestly it fills my cup because I know that I'm able to give them something that can help them elevate. Ultimately, what I'm doing with them, they're all ages. I deal with all ages of women, old, young, but I'm able to give them something that they can then use, right, and they can carry on throughout their life and then share with someone else. I remember being a student at the time and wishing I had an educator that was like me that
Yeah.
took the time to figure out, like ask me questions like, hey, what do you want to do when you get out of here? How can I help you? What are some things you are struggling with? Like really taking the time to get to know them. That's what I do. And that's what I love to do because they need it. It's a challenging program. It's a challenging field being in the beauty industry. And so knowing that you have that support on in and outside of the school, because I stay in touch with a lot of my students after they graduate, just trying to help in any ways that I can. But just having that support in and outside of the school is important because of the industry that we're in. There's so many people that gatekeep information. They keep things from you. And so to have somebody that's like, hey, I can give you everything I got because I want to see you do well and I want to see you do even better than me. It's really hard to come by. So that's what I do. It fills me up tremendously to be able to be there and be that advocate for my students.
I'm gonna say this to you, Shameca. Every interview that I've had so far with your hustle, gatekeeping always finds a way to come up, and I'm very, very, very pleased and happy to know that the people that I've been talking to are not afraid to share the knowledge. We talk about that. I've talked about that at least a little bit with every guest so far, and that really does my heart good because I'm the same way.
Yes.
I never was one to try to hide knowledge or be afraid to have someone do better than me because they know something or whatever the case may be. That you're not doing yourself justice. You're not doing people who are coming behind you any justice by I don't think people realize how much of a blessing it is for someone to come up to you and want to pick your brain. They want
Mm-hmm.
to get knowledge from you. They want you to teach them something. And to be quite blunt, how dare you say no to that?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm really glad to hear you say that. And I think that I know for sure, and I think that the women that you are pouring into and offering, I know they're getting a great deal of knowledge and in a light to keep them moving forward, whether you're around them or not. So kudos to you for that, for sure.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to get into this public speaking and you being a speaker because I know from reading some things about you in your bio and everything that this is something that you are fairly new at pursuing. Um,
Yes.
so go into that a little bit and just kind of how because all that kind of ties in, teaching and all of that stuff. So go into that a little bit.
So when I was younger, I always had like this personality, this charisma to want to be in front of the screen and talk to people, right?
Mm,
But there was a time in my life, just traumas. There's things that happened in my life that kind of took my voice away from me for a little bit. And so when I was trying to figure out what my purpose was, what my gifts were, I had some challenges with that due to the trauma that was blocking me from being able to see and remember, who I am. And so through just peeling back the layers and really figuring out who I am, I found my voice in the process of that. And so when I found my voice and realized what my gift is, I prayed to God and I'm like, okay, God, you revealed to me what my gift is. You revealed to me what my purpose is. Like, how do you want me to utilize my gifts, for the purpose? Like, what do you want me to do? And originally, he sent me to school. And I'll tell you something really quick. So, whenever I would think about public speakers or motivational speakers, and I listened to their stories that they shared, there was always like a common theme between them. They all had like this story of, I quit my job. I
Yeah.
was homeless.
Yeah.
All of those different things. And
Yeah.
thank God, and by the grace of God, that's not my story. And so I
Mm.
asked God, like, well, what do you want me to tell your people? Because I'm hearing all of these same stories from all these different speakers, but I don't have that story. So what do you want me to share with them?
Mm.
And I just feel like God was like, oh, you want a story? You want a
I
testimony?
give
I'm
you a
going to put you
story.
through something to give you something to talk about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I go through the global pandemic, during the scariest time, one of the scariest times in history. I go to school during that time,
Yeah.
and like I was faced with some adversity during that time.
Sure.
But I came out of that with a story. I
Mhm.
came out of that with a testimony, and then I took that same testimony into my business, and I was able to like see things in women that they were dealing with during that time. A lot of them were dealing with an identity crisis, which is what I also dealt with, which is why I struggled with finding my voice for a while, because I didn't know who I was. I was trying to remember who I was aside from all of these different titles, right? So I hear it in these women that would come in, my clients that would come in, and I was like, they sound like me. They sound so familiar. And I
Mm.
know what helped me get out of that. And I want
Sure.
to be able to help these women who struggle with the same thing get out of it. I want to be able to be that voice for them so that they can then find their voice.
Sure.
So aesthetics to me is like a gateway to reach those women who do suffer from, really remembering who they are, right? And realizing that everything you have is already inside of you and not seeking outside of you for validation or for direction. You have it all inside of you already.
Sure.
So speaking actually was birthed from me taking a risk during
Yeah.
a global pandemic
Yeah.
to really, pursue something that I wanted for myself. And so here I am now, very early and very new into this profession as a speaker, but it's something that has always been in me. It's naturally in me to speak. It's naturally in me to uplift and motivate people. It's part of my personality. It's part of my character. But yeah, I actually went back to school because at first I was like, okay, I'm not used to talking in front of large crowds of people yet. How am I going to do this? And God was like, I got something for you here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can go and get your practice in at school.
Yeah.
And really that's what I do every day. Like I absolutely love being able to share my story with my students. I share with them, the challenges that come with going into entrepreneurship. I'm able to share with them the challenges that I went through, the mistakes that I made, and I share with them, hey, this is what I did. This is not what I want you to do. I want you to do it, differently. I'm able to share those things with them, but I'm a voice. I'm like a beacon of light for them. And so,
Right.
yeah, public speaking, I'm new to it, but I'm here.
I mean, listen, again, and doing my well, I kind of knew already, but how I know it doesn't matter. But just doing some of my diligence, you actually have, some really big speaking engagements coming up. One in June, in particularly.
Yes.
Shout out to Black Link Magazine. So with having the experience that you did have, because you've also been, on a stage before to do that specifically. What for someone who wants to pursue that or thinking about it, what kind of advice would you tell them? And again, understanding that you're still new yourself and learning, but you had the experience, you do have some experience. So,
Yeah.
in your own experience, what would you tell somebody that's right behind you that wants to do this same thing?
First of all, I would definitely say get out of your own way. That's the biggest advice that I could give. First off, is to get out of your own way and figure out who you're going to be talking to. Who are you talking to? Because we can't talk to everybody.
Mhm.
One thing that I've learned with being out here is just not wasting your time throwing pearls to swine, like not wasting your time giving information to people who are not going to receive it. So really figuring out who your audience is very important. Figuring out who you're talking to.
Yeah.
And then also getting a coach, getting somebody that can actually help you, build that brand around what you're trying to do. Because when I first came out into this, I didn't have a coach at first. I was just kind of following God's lead.
Yeah.
And I started the podcast because of that. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I know I want to talk to people, right? But I don't really know how to start. And so I
Yeah.
started with the podcast. The podcast was the baby.
Yeah.
And, God was like, okay, you've talked enough behind this podcast. Now it's time for you to get in the faces of others. And so just start with where you are.
Yeah.
Start with what you have. If you have a story, just start sharing that story, right? And don't be ashamed to share the story. Don't be ashamed to share your struggles, your trials. but also, be open to receiving help from other people. Networking is really important,
Yep.
and letting people know that, hey, this is something that I'm new to. And, I want to go into this profession or into this field, and I need all the help that I can get. There's nothing
Yep.
wrong with asking for help. But first of all, get out of your own way and know that you can accomplish whatever you want to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned a podcast called She's All That, right? So, and I
Yes.
think that's a great segue. I think that's a great way to start. As you mentioned, if you're going into public speaking or something where you're going to be speaking in front of people, because
Mhm.
let's be clear, that if it's not the most, it's definitely one of the most um, nerve-wracking things for people to go through, and that's public speaking, right?
Yes.
And it's not for everyone, right? Because there's a lot that goes involved. There's a lot that's involved in it. But I do believe that having a podcast, especially one like She's All That, where you just, you have an audience, you're speaking to that direct audience, and that same audience can carry over to live
Mhm.
events or things like that, where not only they will feel a little bit more comfortable because they feel like they know you, but also you feel comfortable because you feel like you've talked to them before, right?
Yeah.
You felt like, okay, we've already had this conversation over the phone or over social
Right.
media or over a podcast channel or, a radio station, but, now we get to do this live. So I think that's a great segue. Really, really, just super congratulations on everything you've been able to do and accomplish, especially starting
Thank you.
the time that you did, during the pandemic and everything. So, I know I've kind of asked this already, but in closing, I'll kind of ask again. In general, what kind of, just advice, whether it be male or female, are you giving to anybody who wants to step out into entrepreneurship?
Oh man, you got to have faith. Number one, you got to have faith, because faith is going to take you places that hustling can't.
Yeah.
Honestly, faith and favor will take you places that hustling cannot take you. And so, the biggest thing that I would say is, yes, having that faith and having that relationship with God, because a lot of times we get in our own way because we start to overthink things. We're not staying the course. We're overthinking things. We're stepping out, stepping in our own way. But ultimately, the biggest advice that I could give someone is to have faith. Have
Yeah.
that faith and know that if God is leading you in one direction, even though you don't know exactly where you're going, if you move, God is going to move too. He's going to show you the next step. So just make the first step. I don't care if you're starting in your bedroom. I
Yeah.
don't care if you're starting, at the desk of your current job, but you have to get started. You have to get started. But in order for you to get started, you have to believe that you can achieve whatever it is that you set your heart and your mind on. So that's the biggest advice I can say, is to have faith in the dream.
There it is. There it is. Let everyone know how you can be reached, how you can be booked for events, whatever you want to give out.
Yes, so you can follow me on Instagram at Shameca Speaks. And I am also taking bookings for speaking engagements at booking.shamecaspeaks@shamecaspeaks.com. So booking at shamecaspeaks.com, IG Shameca Speaks. And also for She's All That, the podcast, it is _ She's All That, the podcast, on Instagram as well.
And is She's All That on out there in podcast land?
Yes, yes. And you can also stream She's All That on all major platforms for wherever you listen to your podcast.
Hey, yeah, podcast world. I like that.
Podcast world. I like that too.
Oh man, listen, again, Shameca, thank you for sharing your story with your hustle. Definitely appreciate the time you've taken. I know you're very busy. And again, just congratulations on everything. I look forward to seeing you on many stages to come. And
Thank
I know
you.
you're going to be out there changing the world.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that wraps it up for With Your Hustle. Remember to subscribe on YouTube, and also remember to um, follow Always Working Radio on IG. That's always with 2 L's, Always Working Radio. And you can catch a lot of stuff that's happening with Your Hustle on that page as well. Until next time, DJ Swamp Thing. Peace.